Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Experience by Bike podcast. I'm your host, Seth Dubois, and I'm excited to share this episode for two reasons. The first reason is because I got the chance to speak with Jenny Tuff. Jenny's very well known in the bikepacking and adventure sports world. She's competed in the Atlas Mountain Race based in Morocco and the Silk Road Mountain Race based in Kyrgyzstan, both of which she won the women's category. In addition, she's created her own personal project called Run the World Mountains, in which she runs solo and unsupported over a mountain range on every continent. Currently, she only has one mountain range left to go. It was sidelined a little bit, of course, due to the pandemic, but we talk about her plans with that. I'm really excited. I was really excited to talk with Jenny because not only has she been very successful in the adventure sports world, but she's really gracious in how she gives back. She's created a book called Tough Woman Adventure Stories, in which she compiles numerous stories from other women adventurers to share with the world and spread their their experiences. In addition, she is on a board of a nonprofit that helps support the BIPOC community in the bikepacking world, and she's currently working on another book. So Jenny and I talk about her experiences during her Run the World Mountain adventures, what got her into the adventure sports world, what got her into bikepacking and the competitive world. I think it's a great conversation, and I'm really grateful for Jenny to have joined. In addition, the other reason I'm excited for this podcast episode is because it's the first time I'm uploading to the Experience by Bike YouTube channel. So not only am I able to share this on my standard podcast apps, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but I'll be sharing this on the Experience by Bike YouTube channel. So if you're listening to this right now on one of those podcast apps, just know that you also have the option to watch this. So thank you very much for listening in and watching. If you want to follow Jenny, you can follow her on Instagram at Jenny Tuff, and then she also has a website, jennytuff.com. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoy. All right, I'm here with Jenny Tuff on the Experience by Bike podcast.
Hey.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So just to start off with, I'd love to get a little bit of background into what got you into expedition adventures, especially like fast packing, because it seems to me like that's kind of what got you into the whole mountain adventure scene.
So I grew up in the Rocky Mountains in Canada, so I guess I had a really good benefit in my start in life that I did spend a lot of time outdoors, and I was really experienced with backcountry camping by the time that I was old enough to go do that by myself. Like, it was just kind of within my comfort zone to spend time in the backcountry. And I guess I just found that it was the place that I felt most myself and the place that I felt most alive, and I really just loved pushing my body to see how far I could go. So I just started young, and I think every time you go out, you need to raise the bar just a little bit and see like, oh, I did that this time, what could I do next time? So if you start on that program when you're 18 years old, it just kind of escalates really way too fast. I actually started when I finished university. I wanted to go to the Yukon because I'd been to all the Canadian provinces, but I'd never been up north. And I really wanted to go by human power because I was a little hippie and that was important to me. So like the bicycle just made sense, and I never had one, and I didn't really know a single thing about them. But I just got this idea in my head, like I'd been to spin class, so like that was fun. Surely I could ride a bike in real life. Spent all my savings and got this bike that I didn't know how to work, and rode to the Yukon, and then I just got hooked ever since. And you mentioned fast packing, running was my first love. I've always been a runner. So that combination of running and backcountry just made sense to me. Like if I go on a hiking trip, even with a massive like 80-liter backpack, I'll end up running anyways, because if I'm in the mountains, I just get excited and I start running. That's really dorky. So I think that's really how it started, was like I just couldn't help myself. so that I went and got the right equipment for it. And yeah, it's just got out of hand. It's become a big thing now.
That's awesome. So were you kind of doing solo trips from the beginning? Just like going out and like backpacking and camping yourself?
Yeah, I think especially when I was really young, in Calgary, which is where I grew up, I guess I didn't really have outdoorsy friends. You know, I couldn't even get friends to come to that spin class with me, let alone cycle to the Yukon. So I'm the kind of person that once I decide I'm doing something, it's like, we're doing it this afternoon. Like, I'm leaving, we're going. So that, I think, just resulted in going on a lot of solo trips, because it literally was like that. Like, I bought a bike, I'm going to the Yukon this week. Yeah, so I started doing solo trips, and I did like doing stuff with my friends. I just maybe didn't have a good network. But the thing with the solo trips was that, you know, I started doing that when I was a young woman, and I realized the first time that something went wrong and I was out of phone signal and I was by myself and I had to fix it, that I'd never actually been in that situation in my whole life. You know, your parents will put you through exercises where they pretend they're not going to help you, but you know that they're there. Like, if you're about to die,
Sure.
They'll step in. But it was my first time as an adult actually having to do things for myself. And I think it's actually really easy for most people to never end up in that position in their entire lives. There'll always be someone there to step in, whether it's a parent, a partner, whatever it is. And I just found it really incredibly empowering. You know, I really have always struggled with confidence, and then putting myself in these positions where I had to fix my problems. And then when I did, felt so amazing about myself. Like, I couldn't believe I got myself out of that bind, and there was so much confidence I took from that transferred into my everyday life, not just my adventure life. That's just been so huge for my personal growth, and that's why I'm so passionate about encouraging young people to get outside and do this kind of stuff. You know, you don't have to do it alone, but there is a lot of extra benefit from doing that.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. I absolutely agree. Like, in terms of like the self-esteem, and I don't know if you can tell, I've got my little dogs here.
I was about to ask, is that like your microphone or
What
someone
is
about
that?
to come say hi? Like, kind of distracted.
Yeah.
Don't be shy, puppy.
Maybe she's camera shy.
Aw, aren't we all?
But yeah, I completely agree. It's definitely, it's really empowering doing the whole solo thing. And sometimes I feel like my more the adventures I love the most are where it's unplanned. And yeah, you're just like, all right, I'm gonna go out this weekend and see what happens.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think over planning can actually kill a lot of adventure, because one, you'll set expectations. Like, you'll think that you'll know everything about the place, and you've got in your mind how you want everything to look because you've visualized the whole thing. And that's really great for making sure that everything goes really well. But, you know, when you have no idea what's about to happen to you, you're just like you're in the ultimate sense just open to the world, because like you've not made any premonitions about how this weekend's going to go. And that can just be a really refreshing way to approach any adventure, I think. Really
Yeah,
mindful,
absolutely.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, when you have expectations set, and then these expectations aren't met for any reason, that can certainly sour an experience on occasion.
It's like the Sphinx, you know? Like, everyone thinks the Sphinx is going to be, like, it's just that stereotypical one that you go to Egypt and you're like, oh, that's really small. Like, and the Sphinx should be impressive. Like, it's actually a really cool thing. But
Right,
you get
totally.
there and you're like, that Sphinx is actually really small. I thought it was really cool. So, like, if you go to Egypt, don't learn about the Sphinx first. Just go there blind, see the Sphinx, and be like, wow, that's actually really awesome. You'll be the only person in Cairo who's not disappointed by it.
That's so funny. I've never been, but I've heard a similar similar statement.
Well, just clean your mind before you go. Just have low bar for the Sphinx, and you'll
Go
be
to the
excited.
Sphinx fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of going from your local trips to the Yukon, what made you decide to embark on something like your expedition trips, where you started filming them?
So, I mean, the sport was one side of what I really liked, you know, doing the endurance sport and really challenging myself. And that's just an internal challenge. That's just between me and me to see how far I can go. But my real passion, my number one passion in the world, has always been travel and exploration. I've always had a deep hunger to know what's around the next corner. Like, I can't stop. I just want to keep traveling. And it's it's just the thing that I love the most. And when I realized I could combine those two things, like the endurance challenge where I find out what I'm made of, and the exploration where I find out what else is out there, that for me is just a beautiful harmony. So yeah, I started coming up with ideas to do things that were really exciting to me in places that I didn't know anything about. And yeah, like it just escalated. I started filming them. When did I start filming them? Maybe not that long ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Like I never thought that having a camera could actually enhance a trip, because you're just always told that technology is bad and technology will ruin the outdoors for you. Like there's no like love for technology, is there? But I got a camera. I think I'd actually been to a film festival, and
Cool.
this was before I think I ever put my hand up to be on the stage of a film festival. And I was in the audience with my friends, and at one point one of the guys was like, "You've done harder stuff than pretty much anyone that was on the stage tonight. Like, you can complain that there weren't enough women shown in this festival, or you could just be there next time." And I remember really well, one of the filmmakers was there to give a talk, and he said something about how the budget for the whole thing was £800, that like they just like I always assumed that they had a camera crew and they were just these highly sponsored athletes, but it turned out they just were good at editing, and they just like did that extra work to share their project with people. And so like the penny just kind of dropped. I thought, well, I could do that. And then instead of complaining that there isn't enough representation of women in my fields, I could just do something about it. That would be the easiest answer. So that night, I think, ordered a GoPro and just learned how to use it. And just, people were really nice. I mean, YouTube is the most terrifying place on the internet, but
Certainly.
it was oddly like well received, that people were like, "Cool, you did an adventure. Adventure's awesome." And yeah, so I just kind of did it for fun as an experiment, and now it's part of how I tell the stories. And yeah, what I was saying about technology being bad or good, the camera really surprised me that it made me look around a lot more, and it made me a lot more aware of what I was doing. I think especially when you're doing an endurance challenge, you can get into the zone. And I'm so good at getting myself into the zone because I've been doing this for so long, where you just stick your head down and you just hammer your legs. And then at the end of the day, you go to write in your little diary inside your tent and you think, where did I go today? I have no idea. Like anything could have happened and I don't remember. So actually having the camera just forced me to pause more frequently and look around me and say, well, how would I describe this scene to everyone back home? Like trying to frame it and trying to be more creative and look at things quite intensely in that way. So yeah, the camera I just have always found has really enhanced my trips, even though I don't always take it out because I'm just not very good at it. But yeah, it connected me to the places I went more.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do really like hearing that, because I love photography and recording my experiences. And so on a couple of my adventures, I've brought like a little film camera.
Cool.
When I did the Utah Mixed Epic, I brought my GoPro, and you always, everybody is talking about the weight in their gear.
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily everybody, but there's definitely that that ultralight mindset where it's like you don't need anything excess, and a camera's excess. But I find it helps me enjoy the experience.
Totally.
Kind of get my mind away from like the grinding, like you mentioned, just like having your head down, because I think that's an awesome part of being out there, like whether it is a competitive bikepacking race or not.
Yeah, I think, and it does take dedication to do that in a race. I don't know if I could handle it, but
Absolutely.
yeah, if that's the way that you express yourself creatively, then of course you should do it. Like almost everyone keeps a diary of some sort. And I think a lot of us are just visual and prefer to do the diary that way. I think it's a great thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. There was one race I brought my film camera and I never took it out. And I was like, this was a bad idea.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So with your, I know most of your videos were with the Run the World Mountains, the project. How is I know it's kind of sidelined just for the moment because of the pandemic. How's that planning going for you?
Uh, yeah, I mean, so I only have Europe left.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I was in this exact situation exactly a year ago where I realized it was May and I was meant to be flying out to the Caucasus and thinking like, well, what's quarantine like in Azerbaijan? Is that something I want to go through?
Hmm.
And now here I am a year later in the exact same situation where I'm going like, can I actually go to Azerbaijan? Um, like I'm still definitely planning to finish the project this summer. It just might have to be in a different mountain range. So I've literally got plan B, C, and D all ready to go. Like there's plenty of mountains in Europe, so I'm lucky that way. I just need a second dose of vaccine in my arm and for the airlines to go. And
Yeah.
I don't want to do it if it's an irresponsible thing to do for the communities that I'm going to go through. I'm not that selfish. I do want this done, but not at that kind of cost. So
Right.
I'm just kind of taking it as it comes and trying not to get anxious about it because this is first world problems on the highest level, whether or not I get to
Hmm.
go on my little running expedition. So we'll see. I do really hope that it'll be done at the end of summer. Like it's been in my life for 4.5 years now. Like I need to finish this thing.
It's yeah, it is difficult. I signed up for the Silk Road Mountain Race this year, and I'm incredibly excited about it. But in terms of like the moral and ethical um, considerations for the local community, that's something that's absolutely weighing heavy on my mind. Uh, yeah, so I totally understand like having the excitement to do the adventure, but this timing is a little tricky.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard knowing that our lives are on hold, but
Hmm.
yeah, I guess the way I'm looking at it is that like where we're able to go will just be different for a little while, not forever. But you know, there will be places we're able to go this summer. It just might not be the ones that we planned.
Right, certainly.
But that's super cool. You signed up for Silk Road.
Oh, I'm so
That's an
excited.
awesome
Yeah.
race. Oh my god.
It looks amazing. You did you do Silk Road as well?
Yeah, I
Or
did the first edition.
okay, first edition, and then you did Atlas Mountain this
Yeah,
past year. Okay, awesome.
yeah, fun times. I
Yeah.
think in their own way.
To be determined, yeah.
Yeah.
So for the Run the World Mountains, with your planning, were you or with the routes, were you creating your own routes when you were doing that?
Yeah. So the
Okay.
first few that I did, the Tien Shen in Kyrgyzstan, the Atlas in Morocco, and the Bolivian Andes, no one had ever done it before. Like man, woman, walking, running. It hadn't been done. So of course there was no route. So um,
Hmm.
that was kind of the most exciting part was that I got to play explorer. I think a lot of us have that heart of exploration in us, but we live in a time when it feels like everything's already been done unless you have an expedition to Mars. Like we kind of know everything. So when I first started it and I was going to run across Kyrgyzstan, I realized there was no route and there was no guidebook and there were no trail notes. There was no one I could ask. I was like, that is so exciting. I mean, I literally had to use satellite maps and try and figure out my way across this country because there just wasn't any good mapping data that existed for all of it. So I had to do it. I mean, I call it the old fashioned way. Obviously, Google Earth isn't that old fashioned, but like, you know what I mean? Couldn't download any
Definitely.
GPX files. So that, yeah, it was such a fun project in that sense that I did have to do so much work before I got there. And then when I got there, I knew everything was a gamble. Like, I never knew things were going to go. Like, and I got pushed back a few times, like passes that didn't work out or rivers that were too
Mm.
high or whatever it was. Um, yeah, a lot of them were quite stalled, and like the logistics was way harder than the physical effort. And yeah, it was really exciting. And then the last couple I did Southern Alps, New Zealand, and the Canadian Rockies. Obviously, plenty of hikers have been to both of those places, so there were routes that I could piece together, but I still want to do the project of designing my own route and doing things the way that I wanted to cover them. Like they're both those mountain ranges are very remote, backcountry, underpopulated places, so you're still having to do wilderness navigation most of the time. So yeah, I still had to make all the route choices and the navigation, but there was like that comfort level of knowing that every now and then there was a marked trail, which was kind of like a half time you're on holiday and the other half you're lost in the backcountry hoping you survive.
So in terms of the safety aspect, how did you kind of how did you make it I guess less intimidating for yourself, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I like the way that you phrased that question, because I think a lot of people just say, oh, how do you stay safe? And I'm like, well, how do you always stay safe? Like, outside my front door there's a road, I could get hit by a bus.
Right. Yeah.
But my comfort level is completely fine with that road because I know it really well, so I don't get hit by the bus. Not yet. How do I make it? Yeah, I guess you think about what could go wrong, and then you work through in your mind what can you do about that. So, like the first one when I did Kyrgyzstan, I knew the weather could be brutal because most of the range I was going to be over 3,000 meters, sometimes over 4,000 meters, and at those altitudes, weather is quite treacherous and it can roll in on you really quickly and it can take you out really quickly. So I knew weather was something I was really scared about. So I took a good tent for that one. Like all the other ones I bivvied, but on that route, I was really nervous about storms. So I brought a tent.
Sure, yeah.
And I mean, obviously you're going to bring the best gear, like good Gore-Tex and all that stuff. So like I kind of like had calmed down in my mind that I knew what would happen if the weather rolled in. Like I knew how to find shelter and get to lower altitude and stuff like that. There are bits that you don't know about, like human danger. You know that it exists in the world, but you don't know what you're going to run into. So again, you just work through in your mind, like what am I comfortable with and what can I do to mitigate risks? Like in Bolivia, I was being told all the time that I was going to get murdered. Like people would just say to my face, like, oh my God, I can't believe you're out here alone, Gringa, you're going to get murdered. And it's not a nice thing to hear, by the way. If you hear that several times a day, every day, that you're going to get murdered, it really starts to seep into the cracks of your mind. And it really does like have a big effect. So it wasn't long into that run that I kind of always knew where my knife was, and it was like, in my right hand most of the time. And that was horrible for me. Like, I'm not a violent person. I didn't like carrying a weapon. I've never carried a weapon before, and I haven't since.
Sure.
But it was like my safety blanket that I at least had this with me, and I kept it next to me and like slept with it in my pocket. Like, oh man, when that expedition was done and I put my knife away, I was just like, whew, that was a good feeling. I never want to carry a knife again. Like, that is not the way that I live my life. But yeah, that's why I like the way that you phrase this question, that you do pick ways that you're going to calm yourself down, because you can just get yourself worked up into such a panic about anything. Like once you decide that you probably are going to get murdered, whether it's rational or irrational, you're now going to start obsessing over it, and you're not going to enjoy yourself because you're going to be thinking about all the ways you're going to get murdered and picturing it happening and being sure that it's going to happen, and the anxiety goes, and now you have just lost your focus. So just being able to compartmentalize these things and say like, right, I am scared of this thing and I will deal with that this way. Done. I like that.
Yeah. Do you have any specific like games that you like to play with yourself, or I don't know, like listen to podcasts or music, or
I
any
play this
means
horrible
of redirecting?
game. I don't recommend it. Well, no, I do actually recommend it. It depends on the situations. I play What Would You Do? This doesn't sound cheerful, but I were like, oh, what would you do if right now I tripped on that rock and I broke my femur? And then I'll go through in my mind, like, what could I do? And it's a good way to test me about how well I know my kit, how well I know the map. Like, I'll know my route, but do I know if I had to go off route to get help? Do I actually know what's, like, do I have that in my mind, that stuff stored? Like, did I study the map well enough? So I'll go through in my mind, like, what would I do? How much water do I have? Would I get my sleeping bag? I press the button on my SOS, blah, blah, blah. And, like, go through all the steps until I get to the point of, like, yes, you will survive. Like, so that's my fun game. But in Bolivia, when I was playing my fun game, like, every time I kind of went through the steps in the end, I was like, I think you'll die. Because like,
No.
it was at serious altitude, like 5,000 meters altitude. The weather was so bad. There were thunderstorms every single day of that expedition. And a thunderstorm at 5,000 meters is pretty unpleasant. And it's one of the poorest countries in the world. And I always think, like, if I had to press the little SOS button on my tracker and I'm in a thunderstorm at 5,000 meters and there's only one body you can save, like, realistically, how long is my rescue going to take? Am I going to be alive by the time they get here? And, like, so many times I played the what would you do game. I got to the end, I was like, no, let's do something else. This isn't a fun game.
Oh, man.
Maybe I'll just walk. I don't want to break my femur up here. It's not going to end well. So it's kind of grim that time. But otherwise, it's good for working on your survival skills. It's a real fun game.
Yeah, that makes sense and getting your mindset into more of like a logistical frame rather than emotional.
Yeah, and I obviously like it if I'm going through that game and I come up with like, oh, I would only survive if I had remembered to take this one thing that I don't have. Then like I'll pick up that next thing as soon as I have the chance, because I think, well, I don't. Like, I want to travel light, but I really don't want to die. So, like, it's good that way to kind of, like, go through the, like, challenge yourself. I call it, like, stress testing. Like, if you have an expedition plan or a challenge plan, stress test it. Look at all the ways that it could go wrong. Look at all the ways you could hurt yourself. And challenge yourself, poke yourself with these, like, but what about this? What about this? And as long as you can answer all those questions, then you can clear your mind and go enjoy yourself because you know that you've got this. You did the work. If that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of like stress testing your expedition plans, do you bounce your plans and like your gear, like all of your concepts and ideas off any other resources, any like people or?
Yeah, I find with the crazier stuff you do, the more careful you have to be about who you talk to. Because I mean, a lot of people, if you say, I'm going to run by myself across Morocco, they're just going to be like, no, you're not. That's a really bad idea.
Sure.
Terrible, terrible idea. Here are all the ways you're going to die. And they're not super wrong. Having run across Morocco, there are a few ways that you could die, so that's fine. But you kind of don't want to talk to those people too much. Like, maybe, like, you do need to, like, hear it, I guess. But you don't want to be overwhelmed with the negativity. You want to surround yourself with people that when you say, this is my plan, even if they're thinking in their mind, like, holy shit, she's got a bad idea this time, you want the people that are going to be like, good for you, let me help. And then they'll, like, give you their advice. So I think you just, before you tell these plans to the people in your life, you just got to know that they're that kind of person, not the kind of person who's going to, like, put together an intervention and tell you not to do it. Because I have a lot of those people in my life, and I still have to love them. But I also have to know that they're in the bin of people that find out about my trip plans on Facebook after they've happened. And I go, oh, yeah, by the way, I was in Morocco last month. And they're like, oh, if you had told me, I would have told you not to go. I'm like, well, that's why I didn't tell you. So, yeah, you gotta pick your audience.
Definitely. Everybody has the best of intentions, but maybe not for guidance.
I think the important thing to know is to kind of see through it when people are going to bring that negativity to you, is just to know where it really comes from. Like, it almost always comes from a place of fear. And I get asked this all the time. People ask me about how to talk to their moms. I'm like, well, how does your mom deal with it? And, you know, my mom has coped with it really well. And I think coping is the word that I can only give to the way that it is to be my mother. But, like,
Sure.
Yeah, I think the advice I give to people about speaking to their moms or the mom-like figures in their life is just to know that it's not really you. It's not really got anything to do with your failings as a human that they think you can't run across Morocco, but it is their fear, and people will project their fears on you. And women experience this all the time. If we go hiking on our local trails, someone will say to us, oh my gosh, you can't go there alone. It's not actually you personally. It's that they have a fear attached to what happens to women when they go alone, or they are not comfortable with their daughter doing it, so therefore they don't want you to do it. Like, it's just knowing not to take it super personally and know that that person is experiencing a fear right now, and maybe have a little bit of empathy for them, and then also try to educate them that they're wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it can not necessarily be the environment that is the concern, but potentially just that individual's mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, and you run into it a lot, eh? So, I mean, I'm sure that your people in your life are kind of weird about you going to Kyrgyzstan to do a bike race. If they all know where Kyrgyzstan is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean,
There's
it's
definitely
extreme. Like,
family
that race
why
is
are you doing
extreme.
that?
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
What's wrong with you? What is wrong with
And
you,
I
Seth?
definitely feel guilty when I'm doing races because I know my mom's getting probably just as much, if not less sleep than I do.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom's kind of like, we just kind of agreed on a policy of I tell her stuff afterwards. So, like, I mean, she knows where I go. Like, it's not like
Right.
I go surprise I was in Kyrgyzstan. Like, I do tell her I'm going to Kyrgyzstan, but I tell her, like, the really vanilla version of it. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to go do this bike ride. There's 100 other people doing it. You know, there's, like, a doctor on the thing. Like, it's, you know, bike rides.
There'll
And
be
then
people with
afterwards.
cameras.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there'll be loads of people around. I'll be super safe. And then afterwards, tell her the reality. Like, oh, I slept in a drain pipe one night. And I got this, like, really bad infection. And, like... all these, like, slept 2 hours in a snowstorm every single night and all these things that happened. And she's like, you know, she had known that going into it. She wouldn't have been happy with me going to Kyrgyzstan. But afterwards, when I come back and she sees that I'm healthy and stuff, then she's, like, super proud that I toughed my way through all that stuff. She just, you know, she just wants to know afterwards. That's the mom policy, is you tell them afterwards all the ways you nearly died. You don't tell them in advance that it might
Definitely.
happen. Yeah. Poor
That's
moms.
Understandable. Let's see. So, so in terms of, my
The dog going?
roommate just got home, so my dog's going a little wild. Um, so in terms of just like maintaining like daily momentum to just like go out for a ride, go out for a bike, do you find that tricky at times? Just like the basic motivation?
When I'm on a challenge?
Not necessarily on a challenge,
Or
but
my
just
normal
like,
life?
yeah, just daily basis. Like if you're maybe training for a challenge, is there anything that you like to do to maintain consistency during training?
I guess I'm really bad with training. Like, I don't work out because that's always held really negative connotations for me. I mean, I started running only because I thought I was fat and I didn't want to be fat anymore. So it was a really negative start. So my initial impression of this entire world of exercise was a really negative one. It was a way to punish my body for the way that it looked. And as soon as that changed to adventure and to pushing myself and exploration and all these fun ways that I now experience the outdoors, then it just became part of my life and it just became something that I loved, and it was always really positive. So yeah, if I feel like I need to go work out because I need to burn some calories, then yeah, the motivation will be kind of low because I know I'm just gonna feel really bad about it. But if there's a trail that I want to try, or the weather's really good and I want to go hit it or something, then I never would ever struggle with motivation. I mean, I love riding my bike, I love running, and as long as I'm doing it for the right reasons that are really positive ones, then there's no issue. That said, I can't follow a training program for these reasons. So, like, if I enter a race, like, who knows what I'm going to show up with, because I'm not sophisticated in my preparation. Like, you know, I'll do some riding. It just won't be dedicated training.
Sure. Yeah. I spent a long time doing track and cross country, like middle school, high school, college, and it was very just very dedicated and always having to follow a training plan. But it helped a ton having teammates and being in that community.
Yeah, totally.
And so as soon as I left that, I just completely lost motivation for any form of training plan, and I only went running when I kind of like felt like it. And so getting into the bikepacking world, I've really enjoyed, like, when I'm training, quote unquote, for a race, I'm just focusing more on like what I'm going to enjoy when I go out and ride.
That's really good, because yeah, you do hear that a lot from athletes, that when they leave that elite arena where everything is really structured, that they're finally out on their own. They're like, well, now what? What do I do? Like,
oh, definitely.
Why do I have to? That's good that you found like the adventure world then transition into.
Yeah.
Welcome to the dark side, Seth.
Definitely. It's only beginning.
There we go.
So for speaking of competition, what made you decide to go from like expeditions where you're fast packing to bike packing competitions?
Terrible decision making. Like, I'm not a competitive person. And I definitely don't, certainly when I started, definitely didn't ride on that level. I think what really went wrong was that the Silk Road was happening in Kyrgyzstan, which I had already run across. So, like, if Nelson had put on a race anywhere else in the world, I wouldn't have been dumb enough to sign up. Like, I didn't even have a mountain bike at the time, let alone know how to mountain bike. Like, it just, I just got FOMO and I was like, I want to go to Kyrgyzstan again. That was fun. So I just signed up for it. Yeah, I think I started bikepacking, racing, not really sure what I was doing there because I didn't like competing, um, but you're up against the people that are almost like you. You know, they're weird the way that you're weird. They also really like going ultralight and pushing themselves to their absolute limit and a little bit beyond. And so you just become part of this really weird family. And that's, for me, the best thing about bikepacking is that the sport still is quite small and new, that we all kind of know each other. And if we don't, we become best friends within 5 seconds. Like, it is this big extended family around the world of people that are like, as is it, like weird the way that we're weird. And yeah, so it just really became about the tribe for me. And like the races, I really do enjoy the aspect of pushing myself really hard against a route that someone's designed. I don't care where I stand against the other riders. Like, I just hope I'm as good as them because I want to be part of the race or like the ride. Sure. But yeah, for me, it's about the tribe and hanging out with this community. So that's what keeps me coming back to these very difficult and stupid events.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love how during the events you're kind of just like ping ponging with people, and
Yeah.
and it's always, at least for me, it's never been like there's a little bit of competition, but everybody's like, oh, how are you doing? Like, what was your experience over that mountain pass or something to that extent?
Yeah, it's super supportive. That's the thing that I really love. I mean, it's hard in the women's field because there tends to be so few of us that everyone knows
Sure.
who we are and like where we are in the race, and they kind of make a race that maybe we didn't. I mean, like in the Atlas, there was maybe 12 of us or something. So I had my phone in airplane mode. I didn't want to know. I just wanted to ride as well as I could. And I kind of knew who the other women were, and I was really excited to get to meet them and to get to hang out with them and do this ride together in Morocco. Like, there were so few of us, and they were like, I just really admired those girls. But then you're instantly thrust into this race where like the guys are always egging me about the girl in second and the girl in third, and trying to create this kind of animosity or something, this competition between us. And I was just like, I really hope she catches me because I've only been riding with the boys. I want to ride with one of the girls. Like, I just want to meet her. She seems really cool. And like, that's why I can't be an athlete. That's why I'm not competitive enough. Like, hope the girl in second catches up so we can have a chat.
Well, I think that's the good thing about these events.
Totally.
The competitive aspect is there, but only to the extent that you want it to be.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Because yeah, you do turn it on sometimes, and then you just turn it off when you're feeling more social. I mean, you're out there for a week or two, so you go through a lot of phases, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I found it's a good way to kind of I don't know, be care for myself, or like care for my body or mentality. Just like, take a moment and enjoy riding with somebody else in this amazing terrain or experience in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you mean.
So I watched a few of your YouTube videos, and there was one point during the one where you were fast packing the Southern Alps on my own terms, and you mentioned that what you were doing was totally pointless, arbitrary mission with targets I invented for myself.
Yep, that sounds like it.
Which I thought was amazing. So I think let's see. What do you think gives you the like motivation or drive to create these, these arbitrary missions for yourself?
Yeah, I guess it was kind of that realization that like this is all completely pointless and it only exists in my head. It's not against anyone else, but it's like I know what I'm capable of or have been capable of so far in my life. So therefore I know what the next level should look like for me, and I know only within myself how much it will mean to me if I manage to achieve that level and how important it is to me. But keeping awareness the entire time that it's only important to me. Literally no one else on the planet cares. So how seriously you're going to take yourself and how you're going to act around other people and how you're going to project your mission to the world, bearing in mind that like it's just completely unimportant. Like it's only for you, and that's fine. Like you should have things that matter to you that much.
Totally.
But yeah, I think on that particular challenge, I mean, things have just changed so much in my life from when I started doing these expeditions. On the first one, it was just an idea that I had and no one thought I could do it. Like lots of people said to me, like I remember being told the day before I flew out, someone was like, "Oh, good for you. Even if you fail, you'll learn so much." And I was like, why did you say it like that? And that was kind of the way I was treated going into that one. Everyone was like, "Wow, that's a really interesting idea, Jenny." Like,
Okay, yeah.
And then by the time that I got around to doing New Zealand, because I'd been successful at the first three against all odds, in my opinion, there was I maybe imagined it, but there felt like there was a lot of external pressure that people were kind of like, "Ooh, how fast are you going to do it?" And like, there was no assumption that I would fail because I hadn't failed yet. So now suddenly people believed in me in the way that I wish they had a couple of years ago. And then suddenly there was a new pressure because people did believe in me. And I was sponsored for the first time and like had the social media for the first time. And so I felt I'd maybe imagined a lot more meaning. And so I was pushing myself for different reasons and in different ways. And it was really messing with me because I wasn't going as fast as I thought I would. And then, I just kind of had that realization that I was like, what does it matter if you did 60 kilometers today or 40 kilometers today? Because either way, you've run a good distance. Either way, you are nowhere near the best runner, even on the southern island of New Zealand. Like, I'm just such a terrible runner. Like, it's ridiculous that I care. Like, I'm so mediocre. So it's just like, it doesn't really matter. All that really matters is, did you have a really good time doing it? And were you honest with yourself? Did you honestly push yourself as hard as you could? And that level is not a level that will ever stack up to anyone but me. So, I just kind of went through this thing in my head where I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, no one else decides what's a pass or a fail. I'm the only person that this matters to, so therefore I should be the only judge of what's good. And I think a lot of us, it's really hard to make that separation. If we use things like Strava, where whether or not you agree to it, you're going to be put on a leaderboard and everything's going to become a competition. And it looks like everyone's been out today if you open up social media and just all your friends doing harder things than they've ever done before. And apparently no one takes a rest day. And it's just like this constant bombardment. And so even when you're between races, you're still competing like 100% of the time. And I just thought that's just not going to work for me. And I need to step back from that and adventure on my own terms. And so that was, I had to run all the way across Southern Alps to figure that out, but got there in the end.
I think, I love that, how it's, focusing more on the intrinsic value for yourself rather than the external expectations of other people. That can always be a driving factor. The external factor can always be a driving influence that makes those expectations we had a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and if you're actually going to the Olympics, then maybe you need to start worrying about the external factors. But even winning the Silk Road Mountain Race, like, it was fun, but no one cares because no one's heard of that race. Like, there's only like 12 people in my life that care. It's like, it's just not, it can't be your motivation. Like, it doesn't make you a more important person. It's not going to change your life. There's no prize money. So, just do things in an honest way for an honest reason. and know what those are, like know what your terms are, because they're the only ones that need to matter.
Yeah, that's excellent. So for the bike packing versus fast packing expeditions, do you find you have a preference?
I get asked that a lot, and it's like, think you're
Okay.
the favorite child.
Not unique at all then.
I really appreciate the simplicity of fast packing. You know, being on your feet is just the ultimate freedom. If everything's just attached to your back, then like you can just go anywhere, and I love that sensation. But I have plenty of days out there where I miss the type 1 fun that is involved in riding a bike in the mountains. Like, bombing down something on a bike. Like you can get some of that with running, but there's no coasting in running. You really start to miss coasting. And yeah, I do miss the fun of the bike and the amount of ground you can cover. Like obviously you can just cycle way further in one day. So for someone who's out there for the travel and exploration element, being able to see more is thrilling. So
Right.
I go between them. That's kind of why it has to be like one expedition and then the other. Like I do a run thing and then I do a bike thing, because I miss the other one while I'm on one. I feel like I'm cheating on my bikes when I'm running, and when I'm on my bike I'm confused because I'm like, aren't I a runner? What am I doing on a bike? And like, so yeah, I need them both. I love them both.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I copped out of your question, sorry.
Nope, totally understandable. I get it. I do love the simplicity of running and not having to worry about like bring a repair kit or
mechanicals, man. Like one bad mechanical, I'm just like, that's it, I'm a runner. I'm not going doing this anymore. It's too much work. It's too expensive. Things keep breaking.
I can just tie my shoes up, especially when traveling. Yeah. Like
exactly.
Just having some running shoes. It's so simple.
So simple.
So for getting into kind of like supporting the industry, I know you're I believe board member of the Adventure Access Fund.
Yeah.
Through Northwest Competitive Adventure. Do you mind kind of just getting into to what made you decide to become a part of that?
Well, number one, because Jesse asked me, so he's one of those people that's in the bin of friends that like anything he asks me, I just say yes because he's awesome. But yeah, I mean, we'd all just been out. Well, most of us had just been out in Morocco. And it was a place that we got to really reflect on our privilege, that the stuff that we do is extremely privileged, and the opportunities that we've had in our life to be at the point that we can fly to North Africa with our wonderful bicycles and not work for 2 weeks, instead compete in a crazy bike race that was going to physically damage our bodies, but we know that we can repair them when we get home. Like, it's just like the privilege that you're experiencing when you do something like that is kind of staggering, especially when you're doing it in a country where people lack privilege, especially women. And so I think that gave us all a lot of reflection time, and we got home and Jesse was really keen to do something, and he was the driving force of that. He was the one who came up with something and put it to us and just said, would you help? Like, you can't do this alone. And I was like, hell yes. Like, absolutely. I think this is a wonderful thing. I appreciate that I have so much to learn about how to be an ally and how to be helpful. You can't just like throw money at a problem and now it's gone and you feel better. Like, that's not really how it works. So I know that as a very privileged white Canadian woman, there's a lot of things in the world that I just will always be insulated from, that I won't really know what it's like to have biases against you and to have a lot of disadvantages that people have. But I believe so passionately in people being in the outdoors, and that the outdoors should be for everyone, that it shouldn't be a wealth issue or an access issue to use our planet to run around and feel free and feel as wonderful as I feel when I get to go running around. So so that's our hope, is for people that do have barriers to get into the outside, that we can hopefully try to remove some of those barriers and welcome new members into the outdoor community. And yeah, it's like I said, it's a learning curve for me, and I'm really excited and just super honored that Jesse thinks I can contribute anything to the team. Yeah, it's been fun.
Awesome. And do you mind, I don't think I actually specified what the organization does. Do you mind giving a brief overview of that?
Yeah, the Adventure Access Fund, we're specifically focusing on BIPOC athletes who want to get into outdoor adventure, and we're keeping that a pretty loose definition. So we have an application form that anyone can go to our website and fill out and just tell us like who you are and what you want to do and what your barriers are. So, we get people that want to go hiking, but they need a wilderness first aid course because they don't know how to do that. Or we get people that want to enter a bikepacking race, but they need the equipment. The equipment is wildly expensive. Or people that need mentorship. So it's really anything. Like I said, that I have a lot to learn. I think we've all kind of come into it with that impression that we're like, you tell us, like, we want to help, but it would help us if you communicate what are the barriers, because we can't make assumptions about what the barriers are. Like, I think that's been the approach to getting underprivileged, as we call them, groups into sport, is like, oh, well, they just need money. Like, we'll just buy them equipment, and maybe that's not actually the barrier. So if you ask people instead, rather than saying this is what we'll give you, why don't you start the conversation with, tell me what you need. So that's kind of how we've been doing it.
Yeah, I think it's great, especially because, especially during this time, like, fortunately, larger brands are recognizing a little bit more, just a little bit more, that they need to help affect change. And I know, like, right now with cyclocross and with Arkansas, there have been issues, especially with the governing bodies there, right. Because of the trans rights in Arkansas. So yeah, it's great to see that these opportunities are popping up a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think just in the last couple of years, the amount of change that we've seen, of course, it's not there yet, but at least seeing the effort being made, and the pressure is really on all organizations, whether they're big companies, whether they're sporting associations, or everyone. Like, we're really seeing pressure from consumers and athletes and audiences, and that's great. I think if we can keep that momentum alive, then we will get there.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of any current plans, do you have anything that you're working on? Whether it's an adventure that's outside the Run the Worlds, or like a local adventure?
Yeah, at the moment, at this very moment, at the time of recording, I can't leave my health jurisdiction, so I don't have very far to roam. So I'm kind of taking things week by week, just because I think that was maybe the first mistake in round one of COVID, was to like make adventure plans and then have them canceled, and then you're depressed for a week. So instead, I'm just not having plans, and I'm just like only planning things that I know for sure are going to happen. So like I can cycle about 50 kilometers that way and camp, and come 50 kilometers back, and it's not a very big bike ride, but it's a kind of hard one. That's kind of like what I'm working with right now. So I'm doing a lot more like smaller adventures and focusing on time, like, making good use of my time writing a book. That's actually way harder than it sounds. So doing
it sounds hard to me.
Dude, I thought it'd be easy, because like I know how it ends. Like, the book is about me and stuff that I did, so it shouldn't be that hard, but like it's really hard. 80,000 words, it's a lot. So I'm just kind of like riding my bike around Squamish, enjoying. I'm not a very good mountain biker, so I've had a lot of time in one of the gnarliest mountain biking towns in the world to work on my skills.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just kind of taking things week by week and not getting upset about the situation, just trying to like enjoy the everyday things, which is quite new for me. Before the pandemic, I was usually an average of 50-50 nights that I was at home and nights that I was somewhere else in the world. So to travel on the level that you only are literally half your time is spent at home, to then suddenly go 100% of your time at home it's a big adjustment. So I'm focusing on the positives that come out of that. Like, I could, if I wanted to, have a routine or a training plan. Like, I've not succeeded with the training plan thing, but like, the opportunity's there.
Worth a shot.
Yeah, I could try to write a book,
If
you
you
know,
want to.
like, if you want to. Yeah, but Run the World Mountains is the one that I don't want to lose focus on, because I'm such a good
Sure.
starter. As soon as I come up with an idea for something, like I said, it's like I'm going now. I get so excited at the start. So with Run the World Mountains, that it's been in my life for 4.5 years, I know that as soon as I pick the next thing, which I kind of have in my mind what it is, but I know as soon as I like really start working on it, I'll lose my enthusiasm for the fact that I still have to run across a mountain range. And you know what? It's like really hard to run across a mountain range. And now I know that really well because I've done 5 of them. So going into the 6th one, you'd be surprised how low my motivation is, just because I'm like, wow, that's really going to hurt. And I know really well by
You
now
actually
how much
know.
that's going to hurt. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when you've not done it before, you can go like, this will be cool. Who knows? But like once you've done it 5 times, you're like, no, my feet are going to be swollen. I remember how much my feet get swollen. I don't want that again. Like, oh, do I have to? Oh, God.
Definitely. Yeah, I remember my first bikepacking event. I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for this journey. And
Yeah.
then like every subsequent one, I'm starting to get more and more nervous, and then it's harder to eat breakfast right before.
Oh, no. Yeah, exactly. The devil you know, man. It's like, do I really want to keep doing this to myself? Like, now that I know, is this self-harm? Like, what is... It's fun. I'm making
really
this all
reflect
sound
on
really
this.
negative. It is really fun once you get there. You know that you're going to have to push through some stuff as well.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah.
So I will say you've been resourceful during the pandemic, because you created one of your videos about just like doing trips at home.
Yeah.
That was, I forget what the title was.
I think it was
that
probably
was
From the
pretty
Front
awesome.
Door or something really creative like that. I can't come up with titles for things. Yeah, it was nice. Like, I came back to Canada after the first wave, and ended up not being able to leave Canada, so I'm still here. And it was really nice for me because I haven't lived in Canada as an adult, so I was kind of back for the first time and felt like a bit of a foreigner at home. And I was on the island where my parents live, and I don't really know anyone out there, but I had my bike, and I'd just been through quarantine, and you know, quarantines are mentally quite difficult if you're an outdoorsy person, to be locked in a room for 2 weeks. So yeah, as soon as I was out, I just loaded up my bike and went exploring. And yeah, it was really cool. It was really calming to kind of like feel like I was at home, but I was still exploring and getting that feeling, and like getting reacquainted with Canada. And then just knowing, like, especially if you're off-road riding and you can make things a little bit more slow and difficult, then actually there is so much that you can do and so much that you can see. So I haven't got bored yet, despite having been in a very small area for the last 10 months. You know, there's always trails you don't know, and then the weather changes and the trail changes
Sure.
again. So yeah, the From the Front Door stuff has been really fun. And
Yeah,
it
that's
feels like it's
awesome.
kind of the future of travel and adventure, so I'm glad I like it.
Yeah, it is. It's nice to it's kind of refreshing to try to be a little bit resourceful with what you have immediately around you, because yeah, I can definitely find myself getting kind of like irritable or antsy if I haven't, you know, gone on an adventure for a while.
Yep.
And it's really nice to be able to just like get out your door and kind of scratch that itch a little bit.
Yeah, and the motivation, I don't know how you're finding it, but I do find the motivation a little bit harder. Like, especially when say I do that 50-kilometer ride and camp over there, I'm always like, I'm 50 kilometers away from a really comfortable bed. Like, what am I doing? Like,
Totally,
this
yeah.
isn't a logical choice. Like, I pay rent. Why don't I go sleep in the place that I pay for? Like, so yeah, I find I have to convince myself, like, no, remember, Jennifer, you really like sleeping in your tent. You're always happier if you're in your tent. You need to go through that place and you'll feel happy. And I always do, but yeah, it does take more of a push than if you were like, here's a plane ticket to Morocco. Do you want to go? And I'm like, yes. So
Right. Yeah, definitely.
it's a bit different.
Yeah. But yeah, it helps with the mental state.
It does. Very important.
So you also did, you said you're writing a book now, but you also produced or wrote or edited. I don't know what you would specifically.
I think on the cover it says
Okay.
editor. Yeah.
The Tough Woman Adventure Stories.
Yeah, that is the project I'm most proud of that I ever made. When I started in this industry and I went to a film festival and it was all men on stage and someone pointed out you should just be up there. It took some work for me to get to a point that I have a comfortable career in this industry. And I know I've been lucky, but at the same time, I have seen the sexism that exists. And the question always gets asked to me, why aren't there more women in this industry? I get asked that all the time. And every time I get asked, I feel like I don't know how to answer it, because my day-to-day life in my role as a freelancer in the outdoor industry, I work with women all the time. At least half of the people I work with are women. So I'm always like, what? There's plenty of women in the outdoor industry. It's just that you don't see them because they don't make that top level. And I always throw television under the bus first, that they're the ones that, you see one demographic. And the problem with seeing one demographic is that you also only get one narrative. This tends to be this little conquering the outdoors, kind of like big strong man beats the wilderness kind of narrative. And that's only one way to explore the outdoors, and different people explore in different ways. So the book was something I had always really wanted to exist. And then when I knew that I got to a place in my career that someone would listen to me if I said, hey, I've got an idea that I want you to publish, and so I got a publisher, that was the first thing that I wanted to do once I got to that level. So I was really excited, and I had so much enthusiasm to give a platform to all these women that I felt really did deserve a platform and deserve to have their stories heard. And the uptake of it has just blown me away. Every time that someone posts on social media their teenage girl reading the book, I'm in tears. That's what I wanted. Read all these different stories from all these incredible different women who all work in the outdoor industry that I keep on being told doesn't have enough women in it, but actually here's a whole bunch of them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. They're there.
They are there. They're just not getting the top gigs.
Right. I know, in the adventure industry, the outdoors industry, and the creative field, I know it's all pretty similar.
Yeah.
Just in terms, and I guess it may come down to they're also largely freelance fields, which could be a little trickier, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's double risk involved in this lifestyle. One, that you don't have a stable job, and two, that the stuff that we do is in physically challenging environments. So yeah, of course there's a few more extra hurdles that are in the way of most demographics. But yeah, they're out there, and there's different ways. Like I said, there's just different narratives, so it's nice to hear them. Mm-hmm. A lot of the women in the book are mothers and spouses and people who have mortgages and manage to do these things. And that was another thing that I always, before I turned 30 at least, I always got, people would say things to me like, oh, this is really nice you're getting this out of your system. And people would say that to my face, and I was like,
interesting.
What do you mean getting this out of my system? This is something I can just do before my biological destiny takes over, and then I have to quit and be a housewife? Is that what I'm being told right now? So it was really important to me to find some mature women to put in the book, to prove that this isn't just a gap year student thing, that women can explore the outdoors at any age just like a man can. There are just different lifestyles, there's different ways to raise your children. It is for everyone. There isn't a single user group that the outdoors is not for them, So that's a lot of sentiment behind the types of women that are in the book, which is hopefully a good variety of women.
Yeah, definitely. I think you interviewed over 10 women.
Yeah, I think there's 20. I really should know this stuff off by heart. I think there's 25-ish. That's definitely the wrong number, but it's in that field.
Yeah, I really like that in terms of the, indicating that the sport, whether it's the the competitive side or the adventure side, it doesn't have to be about conquering. Because I know so many brands and so many advertisements are just like, oh, you've got to go out and conquer this. And I really like you just did an advertisement recently with the Canyon for their Grizzle bike, and it was awesome because it was just like, it was really fun. It seemed like it was just about, getting outside, adventure, and everybody was you were smiling.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it wasn't that whole, yeah, that rough, grim, this is suffering. It was
Hmm.
just like unleash, I think was the word that they used. Like, unleash yourself. Get out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had so much fun making it. And it's been really nice that it's been really well received, even though they're like this big bike brand that I think are kind of known for elite cycling. And then
Hmm.
they're like, this is fun. Let's go have fun. Go outside, get dirty. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, that's been a fun project.
Yeah. I think it's we're hopefully starting to see a little bit more of that, where brands are embracing the fun part.
Yeah, and I think the rise of gravel and bike packing is really pushing that, at least in the
Mm.
cycling world, because it's just so unsanctioned. So this whole like UCI
Sure. Yeah.
approach to cycling that like, you know, you and I who are normal people who ride bikes that are not trained for the Tour de France still have to only select kit from what people in the Tour de France would wear and ride, and like it doesn't make any sense. Like that's not what I want to do. I want to ride
Hmm.
across Kyrgyzstan, like need a bike for that. So yeah, we're definitely seeing a bit more of this unsanctioned, fun adventure side come up that actually speaks to people who really do want to ride bikes, not just look like a pro, but actually spend time outside with a smile on their face. So I really like where the bike industry is going with that, and that definitely just leads to being more inclusive. It doesn't even have to be led with the concept of we'll be more inclusive and we'll get more user groups. It's just you've now created different narratives and different reasons to own a bike. So, it's
Right.
just attractive to different types of people now. It's less intimidating, it's more embracing. It makes more sense to normal people who want to play outside. So, I feel really positive. I've always found it really hard to identify with cycling as a sport. And I think the rise
Hmm.
of gravel and bike packing, I'm like, oh, I fit in with that scene. That's okay with me. Like, I can identify with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still second guessing using bibs for these type of things.
Yeah. Baggies over top if you're in a
Yeah. Yep.
conservative country, is all I would say.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
um, awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time
It's been
that you
fun.
spent
Thanks for
talking
having
with
me.
me. Absolutely. Yeah. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on, before we sign off?
I don't think so. I don't know. I'm not ready.
Totally okay.
I don't know. Go outside and ride your bikes, or don't if you don't want to. Do something outside. That's all.
Yep. Good call. Just have fun.
Just have fun.
All right, everybody. That wraps this episode with Jenny Tuff. Thanks again for listening in. I really hope you enjoyed. It was great to have Jenny on the podcast, and again, I'm grateful for her for joining and sharing her time and experiences. Um, Again, if you'd like to follow Jenny on Instagram at Jenny Tuff, and then her website jennytuff.com. Also, her YouTube channel, Jenny Tuff, where she shares a lot of her videos of her experiences. I highly recommend subscribing her to her YouTube channel. In addition, if you enjoyed this podcast, I'd greatly appreciate if you subscribed or shared it with your friends or family. And then same goes with the YouTube channel. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, I'd greatly appreciate if you subscribed and then shared this if you enjoyed it. Thanks again for all the support, and I'll see you next time.